Hi and welcome. This video is part of a complete Terraform course I have available. The link with a big discount is on the description. Make sure to check that out and let's get started. Hello and welcome back. Let's now continue with our implementation. Let's have a look at our README. And actually here we have already deployed an EC2 instance, so we can mark this as done. And we have also associated an IP address here. So let's just write this: associate a security group that allows public access. And here we're going to move this to deploying an EC2 instance inside of the created subnet and associate a public IP. So this we have already done. Let's now continue with our security group that allows public ingress. One thing that I haven't mentioned in the previous lecture is that if we look closely at this rule here, it doesn't allow public ingress. It allows traffic only coming from this security group. And by default, EC2 instances in AWS will have this security group if launched within this VPC and not associated with another security group. They will have this security group as well. So with this, private traffic is allowed, but public traffic is not allowed. So let's go back to our IDE and let's see how we can then provide a security group as well as some rules which will enable our public traffic. So let's create here on the top or at the bottom. It doesn't really matter where we create it. We're going to create another resource, and this is going to be an AWS _security group. And we're going to say here, I'm just going to say this is going to be public traffic. Okay. And this maybe we can even be a little bit better, public HTTP traffic. And here we're going to provide a description. The description will simply be security group allowing traffic on ports 443 and 80. Normally, you would consider whether you want to open port 80 or not, because that's not secure HTTP. You would normally open only the 443. But for our demonstration purposes here, let's open both of them. And we can also explore how we set up more than one rule. We'll also provide a name if we want to here. The name is just going to be here, I'm going to say public HTTP traffic. And then here we will also have a VPC ID, and this VPC ID will just be our AWS VPC.main.id, like so. So we can either align it by ourselves or run a Terraform format command. I'm just going to align it by myself here. And we're going to create another resource, which is going to be an ingress rule. So we're going to say AWS security group. And you can see here, if we scroll down a little bit more, the security hub. So let's say security underscore, and actually here, sorry, that should be a VPC underscore security group. And then we have both ingress rule and egress rule. We want an ingress rule. We're going to call this HTTP. And then we will provide a security group ID, which is going to be AWS security group dot public HTTP traffic dot ID. And we also need to provide a CIDR IPv4, which is going to be from anywhere. So basically we are allowing ingress from anywhere from port 80 to port 80 with an IP protocol of TCP. Okay, so this is going to create our ingress rule for port 80. And then we can also create, we're just going to basically copy paste this here, and we're going to call this HTTPS. And then here we're going to say from port 443 to port 443. And that's basically all we need to do to set up a security group with two ingress rules, one for port 80 and another for port 443. If you create an EC2 instance in the console, you will see that they will also suggest an additional rule for SSH on port 22. I'm not going to add it here because we don't want to SSH into our EC2 instance. And for security reasons, actually, there are other solutions in AWS that do not require you exposing port 22 for SSH. Perfect. So the last thing we need to do here is to actually create an association between this EC2 instance and this security group. And there is a very easy way to do that, and it's just to add VPC security group IDs, which is a set of strings here. And the set of strings is represented or is created with this square brackets, and then we'll simply say AWS underscore security group dot public HTTP traffic. Let's format our code. And now it's looking a little bit better. And I would like to also come here from the networking and add a couple of tags. So we're going to tag this, and this here is going to be the common tags. And then the name here is going to be 06 resources EC2. And I would also like to add the tags here where we'll have 06 resources SG. Perfect. Because I have my EC2 instance still running, let's see what's going to happen once we run a Terraform apply. Oops, and I forgot here we should also add a .id at the end of this HTTP traffic. Let's see if now the Terraform apply will proceed until the end. Perfect. And we see we have 3 to add, 1 to change, and 0 to destroy. So let's go up a little bit here, and you will see that our AWS instance here, we're going to change the tags, and we will also change the VPC security group ID. You can see that we have a security group ID which is associated with it, and this is the default security group ID that comes with the VPC. If we scroll up a little bit, you will also see that the AWS instance web will be updated in place. This does not require the recreation of the resource. So the AWS API it supports updating EC2 instances in place whenever we change the security group IDs. So now we also have an implicit dependency here, right? So the security group ID is also a resource on which the AWS instance is dependent. That means that when we run this apply command through, we should see Terraform first creating the security group as well as the security group ingress rules, or actually this might be created in parallel to the change in the EC2 instance. So let's see how that actually plays a role here whenever we type yes. Now you can see that it's first creating the security group, right? So you can see here, that's very nice to see. Let's scroll up a little bit. So it first creates the security group. It then, once the creation is completed, it starts with all these 3 commands here, or all these 3 changes. The first one is the ingress rule for HTTP. The second one is for HTTPS. And the third one is modifying the EC2 instance. Once everything is completed here, then Terraform successfully exits. And we can come back to our browser or to our console here, come back to the EC2 panel, click on the instances running. And here we can see that it now has a name. And if we click on the instance ID, we scroll down a little bit here, click on the security, and then we see that it's associated with the correct security group. So now we can see here, we also have the inbound rules on this page, and we can see that they are correct. We have 1 inbound for port 80 and 1 inbound for port 443 from anywhere here, which are both coming from our newly created security group. Perfect. So if we have a look at our README, we actually have done this, right? So this is done here. Once again, if you're taking a break and you will continue with this exercise later on, then come here, comment out this EC2 instance and apply the changes so that it gets destroyed behind the scenes. Otherwise, if you will continue right away with it, then you don't need to do anything, and you also don't need to recreate it before following along with the next lecture. Perfect. So that's a great moment for us to take a short break and then come back in the next video.